He said he needed space. But what he really needed was someone younger. And when I found out who she was, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because karma had already started working. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Carter, 32 years old. And this is the story of how the man who once swore he'd love me forever ended up on his knees, begging me to take him back. But to understand how it happened, you need to hear how it all began. From the moment our perfect marriage started falling apart. Stay till the end. Because what goes around doesn't just come around. Sometimes it destroys everything in its path. They say love makes you blind. But in my case, it made me stupid. Because I didn't see the lies behind that charming smile. Ryan and I met when I was 24. He was confident, funny, the kind of man who made everyone laugh at dinner parties. I was quiet, working long hours, trying to prove myself in a marketing job. He chased me relentlessly. Flowers, messages, long drives at midnight. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. 2 years later, he got down on one knee in the rain, cliché, I know. And promised me a lifetime of love. I believed every word. Our wedding was small but magical, fairy lights, friends, a tiny chapel by the lake. He looked at me during our vows and said, "You'll never have to cry alone again." If only I knew I'd spend the next few years doing exactly that. Life after marriage started out beautiful, morning coffees, Sunday breakfasts, silly inside jokes. But slowly, something shifted. The texts became shorter. The hugs felt colder. And his late nights at work became a routine. Every time I asked, he'd say, "You're overthinking again, Liz." But my gut screamed the truth I didn't want to hear. One evening, he came home smelling of perfume. Not mine. Something younger. Sweeter. My hands froze mid-dinner prep, but I said nothing. Denial is easier than heartbreak. Weeks later, I found out the truth in the cruelest way. His laptop, left open on the kitchen counter. An email popped up. Subject, "Miss last night already." My stomach dropped. When I opened it, the world fell apart. There she was, Tiffany, 24, blonde, flirty smile. Every message, every photo, proof of their affair. He told her I was too serious, that she understood him better. And that's when something inside me broke. Not from sadness, from rage. When he came home that night, I didn't scream. I just looked him in the eye and said, "Who's Tiffany?" That flicker of guilt in his eyes was all I needed. He didn't deny it. He just grabbed his keys and left. The next morning, his side of the closet was empty. No note. No apology. Just silence, and the faint smell of betrayal. I sat on the floor for hours, numb, until a strange calm filled me. Because in that quiet moment, I made a promise to myself. I will not beg. I will not break. And one day, he'll regret everything. That day was coming. And when it did, he'd wish he never met me. The first few weeks after Ryan left felt like living inside a ghost house. His mug still sat beside the coffee machine. His jacket hung on the back of the chair. Every little thing screamed his name. I tried to erase him, but love doesn't leave quietly. It lingers in the corners, like dust. My best friend, Mia, came over with a bottle of wine and 2 tubs of ice cream. She didn't say, "You'll get through this." She just sat with me, letting the silence fill the room until the tears finally stopped burning. That night, I deleted our photos, one by one. The wedding pictures, the beach vacations, the Christmas selfies. Every click hurt, but every delete felt lighter. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, I started breathing again. Work became my escape. I poured everything into it, staying late, taking extra clients, building campaigns from scratch. And somewhere along the way, I started getting noticed. My boss, Eric, called me into his office one Friday afternoon. He was a quiet man, the type who never raised his voice but always knew what was going on. "Elizabeth," he said, closing his laptop, "you've been killing it lately." "You good?" I smiled. The kind of fake smile people wear when they're still bleeding inside. Just focusing on work, I guess. He nodded. Well, it's paying off. I want you to lead the Parker account. That was a big deal. A promotion meant money, stability, freedom. For the first time in months, I felt like I was standing on my own feet again. But life has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. One evening, I stopped at a cafe near my office. I ordered my usual latte, sat by the window, scrolling through my phone, when I saw him. Ryan. He was across the street, laughing, holding her hand, Tiffany. They looked perfect, like a magazine couple. For a moment, it felt like all my healing shattered. I froze, heart pounding, but instead of running, I watched. He was doing the same things he used to do with me, the gentle hand on the back, the whispered jokes. Only this time, his smile looked rehearsed. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek, and I noticed something. He didn't look happy. His eyes darted around, restless. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe discomfort. But I saw it, the cracks. I turned away before they could see me, sipped my coffee, and whispered to myself. Good luck, Tiffany. You're going to need it. Weeks passed, and through mutual friends, I heard little things. Ryan had quit his job, apparently to start a business. Tiffany had moved in with him, but they were already fighting. He'd been spending money like water, throwing parties, showing off. I stayed quiet. Watched. Waited. Because I didn't need revenge, karma was already unpacking its bags. A few months later, the company flew me to New York for a marketing conference. I wore a black dress that fit just right, the kind that made me feel powerful. At the cocktail mixer, I found myself talking to Daniel Parker, the CEO of the firm whose account I'd been managing. He was older, confident, smart, the kind of man who actually listened when you spoke. He said, "You're the reason our numbers are up this quarter. Your presentation was sharp." I laughed softly. Guess heartbreak makes good motivation. He smiled, that knowing kind of smile. Then I hope whoever broke your heart knows they created a powerhouse. That night, for the first time, I didn't think about Ryan before falling asleep. A year passed. My life was quiet, successful, and peaceful, until karma decided it was time for the next act. One rainy Tuesday, I came home from work, kicked off my heels, and there it was. A message request on my phone. From Ryan. Hey Liz, can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. My heart didn't race anymore. I didn't feel hate. Just nothing. After a few minutes, curiosity won. I typed. About what? He replied almost instantly. I just need someone to talk to. Things haven't been great. I didn't answer. I just set my phone down and walked to the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the broken version he left behind. She was calm. Collected. Untouchable. And that's when I knew. The real revenge had just begun that I didn't reply to Ryan that night. I just left his message sitting there, unread, glowing faintly on my screen like a ghost from a past life. But for the first time, that ghost didn't scare me. It amused me. 3 days later, another message came. Liz, please. I really need to talk. It's important. I stared at it, sipping my wine, the city lights reflecting off the glass. I thought about all those nights I'd cried myself to sleep while he was out, working late. Now he was the one losing sleep. I finally typed back. Fine. 15 minutes. Coffee shop on 5th, tomorrow. The next afternoon, I walked into the cafe where we used to meet on Sundays. It smelled the same. Vanilla lattes, roasted beans, but everything else felt different. He was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked smaller somehow. The confident man I'd once loved was gone. What sat before me was a worn-out version, eyes tired, hair unkempt. You look good, he said softly. I smiled politely. You don't. He winced. Deservedly so. He tried to talk, explaining how things with Tiffany weren't working out. Apparently, she'd gotten bored. She wanted to travel, party, live the influencer life, and he'd run out of money trying to keep up. I thought she was different, he said. You know, fun, carefree. I leaned back, folded my arms. You thought she was easy to control. Big difference. He looked down, shame flickering across his face. I messed up, Liz. I see that now. You were always the one holding things together. Hearing that used to be my dream. Now, it just sounded pathetic. You didn't just mess up, Ryan, I said quietly. You destroyed everything. And now you're sorry because she left you, not because you hurt me. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. I miss you, he whispered. We could start over. That's when I laughed. Not loudly, just that cold, bitter laugh that comes from a healed scar. You can't start over with someone you buried, Ryan. You made sure of that. I stood up, left a $5 bill for my coffee, and walked out. Outside, the wind was cold, but it felt like freedom. Weeks went by. He kept trying, texts, calls, even flowers at my office. Each one went unanswered. Then, one morning, I found out something interesting. Through mutual connections, I learned that Ryan's startup had gone bankrupt. He'd invested heavily, using his savings, and apparently some of Tiffany's money too. When it failed, she was furious. She dumped him and posted cryptic breakup quotes online. The same man who once mocked my boring career life was now unemployed and broke. Meanwhile, I just bought my first apartment. Small, cozy, but mine. Karma wasn't just working, it was writing poetry. A few weeks later, my company was hosting a networking gala. I wasn't planning to go, but Daniel, the CEO, insisted. Elizabeth, you've earned it. Come celebrate your wins. So I did. I wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated. When I arrived, Daniel greeted me warmly and introduced me to a few high-profile clients. I laughed, smiled, talked business, and for the first time in years, I felt powerful. Then I saw him. Ryan. He was there, wearing an ill-fitting suit, standing near the back with a glass of cheap wine. Apparently, he'd been hired temporarily by one of the catering vendors. The sight almost made me laugh. He looked lost, awkward, pretending not to see me, but our eyes met. And in that instant, everything flipped. The man who once thought he was too good for me now couldn't even meet my gaze. He turned pale, tried to hide, but Daniel noticed him. You know that guy? Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Once upon a time. He taught me what not to settle for. Daniel chuckled. Then I owe him a thank you. And just like that, we walked away, leaving Ryan frozen, invisible, in the background of the life he threw away. That night, when I got home, I finally opened his last text. It read, I miss who we were. I typed back. So do I. But she doesn't exist anymore. Then I blocked him. Ryan had made his choices. And now, he was living with their consequences, every lonely, desperate second of them. As for me, I wasn't done yet. Because karma was still just getting started, and this time, I had front row seats. Ryan's downfall didn't happen overnight, but it was beautiful in its slow, inevitable way. After that gala, he disappeared from my life for a while, but I kept hearing whispers. Mutual friends, social media posts, little accidental mentions. Tiffany had moved on. She posted pictures from Bali, sipping cocktails, while Ryan was stuck with debt, unpaid bills, and a shattered ego. I learned he'd maxed out his credit cards, trying to impress her. The house he bought for her? Repossessed. The car he bragged about? Repoed. Every status update, every party, every attempt to show success backfired spectacularly. I didn't intervene. I didn't need to. Karma was doing the work, slow, steady, and poetic. One afternoon, Daniel and I were reviewing a new marketing campaign when I noticed Ryan's name pop up. He'd applied for a temporary position at the firm's partner company, the one Daniel was in talks with. I could see the panic in his eyes the moment he realized I'd recognize him. "Elizabeth," he stammered, trying to sound casual. "I, didn't expect to see you here." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I didn't expect to see you anywhere that mattered." He laughed nervously, a hollow sound, and muttered something about needing a reference. I said nothing. Because I realized the power had shifted entirely. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how far he'd fallen. The man who once flaunted his wealth, his charm, his status, was now scraping by, hoping someone would give him a second chance. I remembered every broken promise. Every lie. Every night I cried alone. And a quiet, dark satisfaction settled in my chest. Weeks later, I received an anonymous tip. Ryan had been caught lying on a job application. He had claimed he was managing a team of 20, when in reality, he'd been fired from his last position. The company terminated him immediately. I didn't celebrate out loud. I just smiled to myself. This wasn't revenge I orchestrated, it was the universe balancing the scales. Then came the final blow. One rainy evening, I was driving home from work when I saw him on the sidewalk, soaked, disheveled, holding a small cardboard sign. "Looking for work. Anything helps." I stopped the car at the light and watched. He looked up, eyes meeting mine. For a second, there was recognition, fear, regret. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't offer help. I just drove past, the rain washing away the last image of the man I once loved. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city lights reflected in the glass, casting shadows that looked like memories. I thought about how far I'd come, the apartment I now owned outright, the promotion at work, the independence I'd fought for. And I realized something. Ryan's fall didn't hurt me anymore. It wasn't about seeing him fail. It was about knowing I didn't need him to succeed. The man who abandoned me had become a lesson, a reminder, a symbol of what happens when you underestimate someone. And somewhere deep inside, I felt complete. Ryan's fall was no longer my concern. I had risen. I had flourished. And the universe had done its job. By the time Ryan's life had crumbled around him, I wasn't even thinking about him much anymore. Work, friends, small pleasures, my life was full again, brighter than it had ever been. Daniel noticed it too. He wasn't just my boss anymore. He became a mentor, a guide, someone who saw my worth when Ryan had only seen flaws. "Elizabeth," he said one evening as we wrapped up a campaign. "You've handled everything this year better than most people handle a lifetime. I hope you know how impressive that is." I smiled, letting the compliment sink in. It felt good to be recognized for my strength, not my devotion to a man who didn't deserve it. Ryan, on the other hand, had hit absolute rock bottom. His credit cards were maxed. He was living in a small studio that smelled faintly of old cigarettes. Tiffany had moved on, of course, leaving him alone with nothing but regret. One night, I saw a social media post that made me pause. He was at a bar, attempting to flirt with someone new. The caption? "Trying to rebuild, one step at a time." I laughed. Not cruelly, but because it was pathetic. This was the same man who used to lecture me on budgeting and ambition. Now he was the one scraping the bottom. Meanwhile, I had grown into a version of myself I'd barely recognized. I had friends who adored me for who I was, a career that challenged me, and a sense of independence that Ryan had never allowed. Daniel and I worked late one evening on a major client pitch. We sat close, laughing over slides, sharing ideas, the kind of camaraderie I had never experienced with Ryan. And then, almost casually, he said, "You've changed, Liz. Stronger, smarter, unstoppable." I think he finally realized what he lost. I smirked. I didn't wait for him to realize. I moved on. Ryan tried again. A voicemail left on my phone. "Liz, please. I've made mistakes. I want to fix things. I miss us." I didn't reply. I didn't even listen. He had his chance, and he had thrown it away. The power had shifted completely. The man who once held my heart in his hands now had none of it. And I? I was untouchable. Even when he showed up at my office, trying to get in contact through a friend, I refused to see him. Friends told me he was desperate, calling everyone he knew, apologizing, offering money, promising change. But I knew better. Change doesn't happen after betrayal, it happens before it. And Ryan had already made his choice. I walked past him once on the street, a brief glance exchanging recognition. His face fell. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a quiet, dark sense of justice. He had built a life around what he thought he could take from me. And now, all he had were crumbs. Meanwhile, I thrived. Promotion, savings, friends, confidence, everything Ryan had once controlled, I now owned. And I smiled every time I thought about it. Not because I hated him, but because life had done what I never could, it had balanced the scales. Even though Ryan had fallen apart, life had a way of reminding me of the scars he left behind. I wasn't heartbroken anymore, not in the way I had been. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself thinking about the past, the trust one had given, the dreams he had stolen, the mornings I woke up hoping he'd change. One rainy afternoon, Daniel called me into his office. "Elizabeth, you've done amazing work on the Parker account. But I think you're ready for more. I want you leading the new West Coast division." My heart leapt. A promotion like this wasn't just money, it was power, freedom, and proof that I had risen higher than Ryan ever could. I don't know what to say, I whispered, fighting back a smile. "Say yes. You've earned it." And I did. But Carmel wasn't finished with Ryan yet. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that he'd moved back in with his parents. The apartment he once flaunted? Gone. The car he boasted about? Repossessed. His pride? Completely shattered. He tried to reach out again, this time through emails, social media, even showing up at events I attended. Every attempt failed. Every time, he was reminded that I had moved on, emotionally, professionally, and socially. One evening, I attended a charity gala. I was seated at a table with Daniel and several other influential clients. The room was elegant, filled with laughter and ambition. And then I saw him. Ryan, standing near the bar, wearing an outdated suit that hung off his frame. He looked nervous, almost invisible in the crowd. Tiffany was nowhere in sight. I realized he was truly alone, the consequences of his choices hitting harder than I ever could. I sipped my wine, letting the moment sink in. He was small now, fragile, and insignificant. The man who had once controlled my world had been reduced to a shadow of himself. That night, I walked home in the drizzle, thinking about how far I had come. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't even need him to suffer, though I knew he was. The world had already balanced the scales. Weeks later, Ryan sent me a letter. Handwritten, messy, desperate. "Elizabeth, I know I hurt you. I've lost everything. Please. I just want a chance to explain." I held the envelope in my hand, feeling nothing but calm. I didn't open it. I didn't respond. He had been given 1,000 chances, in love, in life, in respect. And he had squandered every single one. Instead, I placed the letter in a drawer and shut it. Because I wasn't that person anymore. I had risen above the pain, above the betrayal, and above him. That night, I looked in the mirror and smiled. The reflection staring back at me wasn't broken. It wasn't hurt. It was strong, independent, and unstoppable. Karma had done its work. And I had done mine. Just when I thought Ryan's chapter in my life was over, life threw me an unexpected twist. It was a crisp autumn morning. I had a big presentation for a high-profile client, the kind that could make or break my career. I arrived early, reviewing notes, rehearsing key points, completely in my zone. And then, the elevator dinged. Ryan stepped out. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just looked at him, the man who had once broken me, and felt nothing. "Elizabeth," he said, voice low, almost pleading. "Can we talk? Please?" I shook my head. "Not now. And probably never." He followed me down the hallway, ignoring the looks from colleagues. Liz. I know I ruined everything. I'm sorry. I see it now. Please, just, let me explain. I stopped and turned slowly. Explain? Ryan, you left me for someone younger. You destroyed our savings. You lied, cheated, and humiliated me. What explanation could possibly fix that? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Words failed him, and for the first time, he realized he had no power over me anymore. That day, I nailed the presentation. Clients applauded, Daniel shook my hand, and later said, "You've outdone yourself. I knew you were good, but this is exceptional." I smiled, knowing he saw what Ryan could never understand. My worth wasn't defined by his approval. Later that evening, news reached me that Tiffany had left Ryan again. Apparently, she was now dating someone else entirely, younger, richer, and more exciting. Ryan was alone again, scrambling, desperate, and broken. I couldn't help but feel vindicated. Then came a twist I hadn't expected. A mutual friend called, whispering, "Elizabeth. Ryan's trying to get back with you. He's begging, saying he's changed. You need to see this." I laughed out loud. The audacity of the man. After everything, he thought he could just crawl back into my life. I didn't reply to the messages or answer the calls. Instead, I let the universe continue its work. Weeks later, I attended another gala, this time, for a charity I had been working with. I was confident, radiant, unstoppable. And I noticed Ryan in the crowd. He looked smaller, desperate, trying to blend in, but everyone could see the failure etched into his face. I walked past him, not a word, not a glance. But I knew he saw me. And that was enough. That night, I received another message from Ryan. "Please, Elizabeth. I can't do this without you. I've realized what I lost." I typed back, calmly, deliberately. "You lost me, Ryan. Permanently. Don't contact me again." And then, I blocked him. For the first time, I felt truly free. No anger. No sadness. Just a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had built his own prison with his choices, and I was watching from the outside, smiling. The twist wasn't just that he was desperate, it was that I no longer needed closure. I had created my own happiness. I had rewritten my story. And the best part? He realized, too late, that karma wasn't a myth. Months had passed since Ryan's desperate attempts to contact me. I was thriving. My career had taken off, my apartment was perfect, and I had friends and a life that filled me with pride. Ryan, on the other hand, was a cautionary tale whispered among mutual acquaintances. He had lost clients, burned bridges, and was struggling to maintain even a basic lifestyle. But then, one evening, life forced me to face him, one last time. I was hosting a charity event at the downtown gallery, walking among donors and patrons, ensuring everything ran smoothly. The room was filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and soft music, the kind of evening that reminded me how far I had come. And then I saw him. Ryan. Standing at the edge of the room, looking out of place, holding a glass of cheap whiskey. The desperation in his eyes was raw, unlike anything I had ever seen before. He looked at me, hope flickering, but also fear. He took a step toward me. "Elizabeth, please. Just 1 minute. Let me explain." I stopped, facing him fully. "Explain what, Ryan? How you destroyed my life? How you threw away a marriage for someone younger? How you thought you could get away with it?" His shoulders slumped. I was stupid. I thought I knew what I wanted. I see now. I was wrong. I laughed, a soft, bitter laugh. "You always see too late." He looked at me, pleading. "I've changed, Liz. I swear I've changed. I can make things right, we can start over." I shook my head slowly. "No, Ryan. You can't start over with the woman you betrayed. You don't get to rewrite the past. You don't get a second chance with me. He went pale, the panic in his eyes unmistakable. But I love you. I always have. Love isn't about taking. Love isn't about lies. And what you had from me was never love, it was control. I stepped closer, my voice calm but sharp. Look around you. Look at your life. Empty. Lonely. Failed. Karma didn't need me to touch you. You did this yourself. He faltered, words failing him. For the first time, Ryan was powerless. The man who once commanded my heart, my trust, and my life, completely undone. I straightened, turning away, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. No bitterness. No hate. Just a deep, dark satisfaction that only comes when justice is served naturally. Later that night, I walked home alone. The streets glistened from the rain. My reflection in the puddles showed a woman transformed, confident, radiant, untouchable. Ryan had wanted to see me fall. He had hoped I would beg, plead, or break. But I didn't. I had survived. I had grown. I had won. And he? He was crawling through life, learning too late that actions have consequences. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and smiled. The city lights shimmered like tiny victories. For the first time, I felt fully at peace. I didn't need him. I didn't need revenge. The universe had done all the work, and I had done mine. I survived, I thrived, and I refused to be anyone's victim. After the final confrontation, life felt lighter, almost surreal. It was as if all the tension, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak had been washed away. I was no longer Elizabeth, the woman abandoned by her husband. I was Elizabeth, the woman who survived, grew, and reclaimed her life. I started spending more time on myself. Mornings were no longer rushed with anxiety. I woke up, brewed my coffee, and sat by the window, watching the sunrise. Sometimes, I wrote in my journal, not about Ryan, not about the past. But about dreams I had set aside, projects I had postponed, ambitions I had buried. I traveled more, too. Small weekend trips, visits to museums, hikes in the mountains. Each step reminded me of my independence and my strength. Work was thriving as well. Daniel had been instrumental in helping me expand the West Coast division. I was mentoring younger employees, leading teams, and earning recognition I had never dreamed of during my marriage. I realized that success wasn't just about money or status. It was about creating a life that made me feel alive. And then came someone unexpected. Daniel. It wasn't a romantic twist I had been seeking, it was companionship, trust, and mutual respect. We spent long evenings discussing campaigns, sharing ideas, and laughing at life's absurdities. He never tried to replace Ryan in my heart, he simply existed as someone who appreciated the woman I had become. One evening, while closing a client deal, he said softly, "Elizabeth, you're unstoppable. I've seen it all year, your strength, your resilience. I'm proud of you." I smiled. "Thanks, Daniel. But I think the proudest person here is me." He laughed. "True. And I'm just lucky enough to witness it." Meanwhile, news of Ryan's continued struggles trickled through mutual acquaintances. He had been rejected from multiple jobs, struggling with debt, and isolated socially. I didn't feel glee or satisfaction. Just an affirmation that the universe had corrected itself. I was free, and he was confined by the consequences of his own choices. I started new hobbies, met new people, and allowed myself small pleasures I had denied during my marriage. Cooking classes, painting, volunteering. The life I was building had nothing to do with Ryan and everything to do with me. I even began mentoring women who had been through similar heartbreaks. "It's not about revenge," I told them once. "It's about reclaiming yourself. Karma will take care of the rest." It was liberating, watching others gain strength while I solidified my own. By the end of that year, I realized something profound. I didn't need closure from Ryan. I didn't need him to beg, apologize, or explain. I had my life, my strength, my peace. And sometimes, when I thought of him, I only smiled. Not with malice, but with satisfaction. The woman who was once broken was now unbreakable. The betrayal that had once threatened to define me had instead refined me. By the time part 10 arrived in my life, everything had come full circle. I had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident than I ever imagined. Ryan? He was a shadow of the man he once was, a constant reminder that choices have consequences. I first heard about his ultimate downfall through an old mutual friend. He had tried to start a small business to regain some stability. But his lack of planning, overconfidence, and impulsive decisions caused it to fail spectacularly. He was now not only broke but had burned bridges with everyone who had once supported him. Tiffany was gone for good. The circle he had sought to create around wealth and charm had collapsed. I didn't feel joy from his failure. I felt calm. Justice didn't need my interference. Karma had done it all. One evening, as I returned from a work event, I passed by a cafe and noticed him sitting alone. No friends, no luxury, no confidence, just him, staring into a cup of coffee like the weight of his life had finally hit. For the first time, I truly understood that he had nothing left to cling to. I walked past without a word. No confrontation. No drama. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the universe had balanced the scales perfectly. Meanwhile, my life was thriving. I had secured a permanent leadership role in my company, traveled extensively, and my friendships had deepened. Daniel and I continued our professional collaboration, and our bond grew stronger each day. For the first time, I realized happiness didn't come from someone else, it came from within. Months later, I ran into Ryan again, this time through a professional event. He tried to approach me, awkward, desperate, broken. "Elizabeth, please, just one moment." I looked at him, calm, collected, untouchable. "Ryan, I've said everything I needed to say. My life is moving forward. Yours is your responsibility." He faltered, realizing once and for all that I had no place for him in my world anymore. The power that once rested in his hands now rested entirely with me. That night, I reflected on everything, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the pain. And I realized that the most satisfying revenge wasn't in hurting him. It was in living well, thriving, and proving to myself that I was stronger than anyone's betrayal. Ryan had made his choices. The universe had given him the consequences. And I had reclaimed everything he had tried to take from me, my dignity, my happiness, and my life. I poured a glass of wine, looked out at the city skyline, and whispered to myself. I survived. I thrived. And now, I'm free. No texts, no apologies, no begging could ever touch me again. I had the life he wanted to destroy, and I had built it from the ashes of his betrayal. Full karma had arrived. And it was perfect. I survived. I thrived. And now, I'm free. You can continue with. If you stayed with me till the end, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments, I'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life, emotional stories just like this. Your support helps me bring these stories to life, and trust me, the best stories are yet to come.